Winx is coming back with a shiny new reboot this year, and a couple days ago, they released Aisha's new transformation for it. Which is a big deal to me, because despite coming to the show a season later than the rest of the girls, Aisha is absolutely era-defining in my opinion. She's confident, competitive, a bit reckless and rebellious, but also deeply caring and desperate to connect to people. She's just the epitome of cool to me, and still has this really vulnerable side to her that still gets me emotional 15 years later. So I'm not gonna lie, I don't really see any of that in this design. Which means, over the course of this video, I'm gonna try to figure out why it doesn't work for me, and redesign it into something I would have preferred. Afterwards, I get a little bit of help from Gaffix on YouTube, who's been so kind as to analyze the line flow of both versions and offered some really helpful corrections for my redesign. Starting out, I first tried to be lazy and just trace Aisha's final pose so I can use that as a base, but yeah, I don't think I'm too good at that. So I scrapped that and started from scratch, trying to keep the proportions and pose somewhat accurate, and hey, this worked way better. I'm actually really happy with the pose, usually this takes me much longer. The next couple minutes I just experimented with different styles of clothes, but I think I went a little too overboard with it at first. I think I tried too hard to call back on those regal little sashes and layers of her original design, and that made it look a bit too mystical and not enough sporty and Y2K. I also tried incorporating more of her reboot design elements, but I'll admit I didn't try very hard with that before I gave up. The look I settled on is much more plain than I was originally going for. I kind of like it though. Aisha is a no-nonsense kind of girl who's not afraid of getting into fights, so she might actually prefer a less cluttered outfit. Plus, it makes me think of swimwear and those beachy little wraparound skirts, which ties in a bit more of a power set into the design. Another thing I was absolutely sure I wanted were those big bottom-heavy boots. Not only is that flaring out kind of leg warmer shape a classic early 2000s look, it also adds a bit more weight to her step, a bit of that punchiness that looks really cool for both fighting and dancing. Her hair I also experimented a lot with before deciding that less is more. The girl's first form can afford to be a little bit more down to earth, but if Aisha ever gets an upgrade or enchantix, I would love to revisit that idea with the big poofy braids and funky ribbons. For now, I like the half-open locks with the two little buns. It reminds me a little of 80s dance movies and Sailor Moon. Something I didn't manage to fit in with her pose, but I still wanted to show off, is the little half glove on her left hand. Aside from the skirt, the outfit turned out very symmetrical, and I think adding a bit of mismatched accessories on her arms can bring back that rebellious streak of her into the look. Here I'm just doing the cleaned up line art, and I gotta apologize for zooming around so much. I'm drawing on my iPad and it's really tempting to spin the canvas around instead of moving my hand. So while I'm putting in the base colors, let's talk about the big, the obvious, the bright teal elephant in the room. Color palettes. I do not care for teal Aisha. This is my hill to die on. No amount of blue means water arguing will shift my position on this, which is that green is the most phenomenal color for Aisha. And I'm gonna admit that as a kid, I really did miss what Aisha's power set was exactly, but that didn't matter because she was still the coolest. Aisha's always made me think of calm ponds and lily pads and feathery algae and tropical reefs. And I appreciated that the show didn't always go with the most obvious color choices. They always put the design itself first. Plus, if we look at the original, the color palette actually works way better from a character design point of view. You've got the big main color green and the nice adjacent cyans for the wings, and then you can get that bright, contrasting pink for her magic and special effects. That's literally just a split complementary color scheme, and it works! I did overdo it with the pinks at first, though, I will admit that. Don't worry, I swapped them for turquoise in the end. For Aisha's wings, I have always been a huge fan of dragonfly wings. I've curved them downwards a little bit because it reminded me of cresting waves, and something about the parallel lines also makes me think of like Adidas shoes? I don't know, it makes me feel sporty. Not everything has to make sense. I wanted a bit more colorful, iridescent look at first, kind of like soap bubbles. But when I was playing around with color modes, I realized this is actually the perfect place to bring Aisha's water magic back into the mix. So now the pattern looks a bit more like sea foam or water caustics. I really think this could have worked so well in a 3D design. Imagine the way the light would have refracted through this every time Aisha moves. Anyway, after a bit more fiddling with the Morphix bubble and adding a load of glitter, this is how it turned out. I'm really happy with this look for her. It's probably not exactly what I would want from Canon Winx Club, and I have no idea if this would translate well to 3D, but I like it. That being said, Gaffix on YouTube, or We Are the Winx on Tumblr, did offer me some really good feedback when I first posted this on Tumblr, and I do want to mention it here. He also analyzed Aisha's Canon look and visualized how all the lines end up leading the eye to her middle instead of her face. My design managed to avoid that a little bit, but the details at the top of the boots do kind of draw the attention downwards. Gaffix talks more in depth about the details in his post, so go check it out! To summarize, if we wanted to improve on the way this design guides the eye, we could remove one of the 2 green stripes at her knees and simplify the boots a little to have a calmer area of color for the eye to rest. What do you think? This ended up being a lot of ranting on my end, and I do hope I didn't get too negative, all in all. While I do enjoy being a little hater from time to time, I want to be at least somewhat productive with it, so I'm currently doing a round of redesigns for all the girls. I do think the rest of the designs hold up a lot better, and Bloom's transformation is actually kind of growing on me to my surprise. So it's not like the reboot is looking all bad. I'm definitely gonna keep an eye on it either way. Thank you for watching!